Predicting the future stars of MLB is no easy task, yet there is no shortage of prospect prognosticators. Where does Colson Montgomery land on the latest list, and when can we see him on the south side? Mike Clevinger is under investigation for domestic violence and child abuse. Lots of fans want the White Sox to cut ties right now. However, it's complicated. And some good news, finally, Steve Stone and Jason Benetti will be back in the broadcast booth.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sox math and what's in the bucket lives to see another season as Benetti and Stone will return. The White Sox will have to sit back and wait as MLB continues their investigation into Mike Clevinger, and predicting the future can be a maddening ordeal. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. Look for additional episodes this week on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll be back up to 5 episodes once spring training gets underway. Thank you to some new YouTube subscribers and podcast listeners. Thanks for passing this along to other Sox fans in your life. Just a quick reminder that Wednesday's episode will be Mailbag Wednesday. Get those comments, questions, predictions in lockedonsox@gmail.com. Hey, we are about 2 weeks away until pitchers and catchers report, roughly 8 weeks until opening day. Still waiting on that big trade that was talked about at the beginning of the offseason by general manager Rick Hahn. Some notes and news about spring training, who's going to be invited, who will be there. 7 White Sox top prospects receive non-roster invites to spring training this year. I guess the question really is, how much faith do you have in the prospects? Or maybe it's just not getting up for the letdown. Scott Merkin had some information through some articles on whitesox.com. Colson Montgomery, the number 1 White Sox prospect per MLB pipeline, and Billy Hamilton, a veteran who strongly resonated with the fan base from a bench role in 2021, were 2 of the 26 players extended non-roster invites to the 2023 spring training. The team agreed to terms and minor league contracts with 9 free agents and added 17 players from within their system, Merkin wrote. Montgomery, 20 years old, was the team's top pick and 22nd overall selection in the 2021 draft. Left-handed hitting shortstop will be joined on the non-roster invite list by 6 players also in the White Sox top 30 prospects. Just a few here. Outfielder Oscar Colas, who I'm sure you have heard so much about. He is the number 2 prospect in the Sox system. And then right-handed pitchers Sean Burke, number 9, and Matthew Thompson. We'll hear from them later in this episode. Thompson, number 15. So Oscar Colas, we've been hearing about this guy since really the beginning of the offseason, kind of in a way that The White Sox talked about Andrew Vaughn a few years ago. Cole has not a ton of experience in AAA, that's for sure. And he very well might play a role this year in right field, maybe some DH. But what about in years to come? The White Sox have a weak farm system. Talked about it here on Locked On Sox a couple weeks ago. It sure seems like Colson Montgomery is the future. A lot of buzz surrounding him as of late. Keith Law from The Athletic just came out with his top 100 MLB prospects, and Colson Montgomery, he's got Colson up at number 25. Now, Colson Montgomery, 6'4", a little over 200 pounds, bats left, which the Sox desperately need, throws right, and drafted again in 2021. Sox took him at number 22. Last year, Keith Law had him unranked, and here he is at number 25. And again, we'll talk a little bit about, does it even really mean anything? But for this sake, Keith Law has got Montgomery at number 25. This is what Law had to say about Montgomery. Montgomery was a risky pick in the first round in 2021. He was 19 years old at the draft and came from a high school in rural Indiana where he didn't face much good pitching. He's panned out so far, reaching Double-A last year after very strong performances as a 20-year-old in Low A and High A, where he showed advanced plate discipline and bat-to-ball skills before fading in August as he got tired. He was slashing 309, 420, 462 between the two levels, and then struggled after the White Sox promoted him along with all their key prospects to Double-A to finish the year. He's 6'4" with long limbs, and his swing can get long when he's going for pitches on the outer edge or beyond, but he's disciplined enough that he hasn't chased much at the lower levels. The consensus among scouts is that he'll move off shortstop, and he may very well outgrow it, but he gets very good reads and comes in well on balls with plenty of arm for the left side of the infield. With his strong hit, OBP skills, Montgomery's ceiling comes down to power. Right now it's below average, but as he fills out, he should get at least to average, which would make him a solid regular at third or an above average regular at shortstop. Now, Scott Merkin, he had a conversation with Montgomery, and I got an email blast about this. I'm sure it's going to be on whitesox.com eventually. Article on what's, Colson Montgomery really looking forward to in Camelback. And this is from the article from Merkin. The upcoming weeks in Glendale, Arizona will be a back-to-school session for Colson Montgomery. He should get some Cactus League at-bats and a few games in the field, but Montgomery will gain just as much simply by talking, listening, and observing. I think it's just the experience of going against the best of the best pitching and also playing against the best of the best, even hitting and fielding and position players, Montgomery said. It would be cool to sit there and see how they interact and how they interact with the game, pick their brains, ask questions about all that stuff. Montgomery has been working in Nashville this offseason with a major league crew, including teammates Jake Berger. Remember him? And Sean Burke, trying to be more explosive through strength and conditioning, plus working on his first step quickness. His learning curve will soon continue at Camelback Ranch, with Montgomery turning to not just Anderson, but other veterans. It's really cool to see how they work, how they do their routine, Montgomery said. It really helps when you are a young player, when you see a major leaguer do all that stuff. Your goal is to be where they are at. It's just good to take those mental notes being a young player. So again, a question to you. I'm sure you've talked about this in other groups, Sox fan groups. I've had these conversations just recently, and I'm on the fence on it. Do you still have faith in the prospects? I feel like I've just been, burned after the last rebuild. I didn't pay too much attention about prospects before 2016. Really, I felt like it was, you know what, let's get rid of our farm system. Let's try to win another World Series when we can, at least get back to the ALCS. Let's get veterans, let's get ready to go players. I didn't have the patience as a fan, and that was probably short-sighted. We all know what happened during the sale trade, the rebuild, and selling off assets, and we just got all of these young prospects, and then we drafted high, and as of right now, we have nothing really to show for it. And I think way back when, Yoan Moncada, I think, was a number one prospect, number one rated in all of baseball around 2016. And Luis Robert, number 5 overall, I think in 2019, moved up after that, might have made the top 3 in all of MLB in terms of prospects. And those numbers, I'm sure, are important to other executives, when they're looking at trades and so forth. But it's such a subjective thing. It's not an exact science, obviously, as we found out as White Sox fans with some of the names that we were really excited about and fizzled out, or nothing came of them. Still really waiting for Yoan Moncada to live up to that hype that he didn't call for, hype that was put on him. Same thing with Robert. So, does having Montgomery make Tim Anderson expendable eventually? Are they going to actually, and by they, I mean the White Sox, re-sign Tim Anderson down the road? Or do they look at a guy like Colson Montgomery and say, well, he's a couple years away. We're not going to pay Tim Anderson what he wants. We're going to go the cheap route, and we'll have Colson Montgomery there. Does Colson Montgomery ever play in a White Sox uniform? He's one of the few assets they have right now. And maybe they're going to try to really attack this window that they have, which feels like it's closing by the month. And maybe he gets traded off, for ready to go talent that can help the Sox win right now. I don't know if that's the smartest move, but this is the White Sox we're talking about. How do the White Sox avoid a rebuild, another rebuild? And that's something that we'll probably be talking a little bit more later this week, especially with the mailbag. Lots of fans would like to see the Mike Clevinger era over before it ever starts. I'm going to tell you why the White Sox will have to be patient. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. You got the over-under right now for the Super Bowl, 49.5, and points to be scored in the first minute of play. That's a plus 4,000. Interesting stuff on FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid. Get your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked-on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Mike Clevinger might never pitch in a White Sox uniform. Obviously, we're about a week away, removed, I should say, from the news breaking about this MLB investigation. And, a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts thrown out instantly on what the White Sox should do, a lot of hopes and wishes by Sox fans. And I just got a general consensus that, most fans just let's cut bait. Let's get rid of this guy right now. It's a mess and forget it. that's a little complicated, as we're finding out now. There was an article by James Fegan late last week that shed some light onto the situation here. League policy prevents the team from disciplining Clevinger now, according to Fegan's article. Per the MLB and the MLBPA's joint domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse policy, the commissioner's office holds the authority to discipline players in violation of the policy. Therefore, the White Sox would not be authorized to discipline Clevinger prior to the completion of the investigation unless the commissioner's office transferred that authority to the team according to the policy. Releasing Clevinger before the completion of the investigation would likely be construed as grounds for a grievance. The investigation just became public recently, but MLB was first made aware of the claims last summer when Clevinger was playing for the San Diego Padres. Again, I don't need to remind you, but I will. The White Sox signed the free agent in December to a 1-year, $12 million contract. Now, according to Fegan, the non-disciplinary administrative leave is an option to keep players away from their teams while investigations are ongoing. Such a move is, again, under the purview of the commissioner, and extensions would have to be jointly agreed upon with the MLBPA. Unless a decision on administrative leave is issued by the league or the investigation reaches a resolution resulting in an unpaid suspension or not, the White Sox's commitment to Clevinger for the year is binding. I just think this is, as long as this keeps going on, and I don't know how quick one of these investigations will wrap up. I mean, look, we're 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting to Camelback Ranch, and Clevinger's not going to say a word. I don't think people are going to ask about it. They might try. I'm sure they will be given guidance that is off limits. The White Sox are not going to comment while this investigation is going on. It's messy. It's this cloud that's going to be hanging over the team on what to do, or, if this guy is even going to be of value to us at all throughout this season. And the question, we talked about last week, and it's still pondering over the weekend of now what? What do the White Sox do? And of course, there's Davis Martin, who had that forearm issue during the last game of the season where he got rocked by the Twins. Maybe Sean Burke. Fegan wrote about some options, namely Sean Burke and Matthew Thompson in an athletic piece. Fegan said sometimes the non-roster invite list is useful because it answers a question. For example, if Mike Clevinger is unavailable and Davis Martin is pushed into the rotation until further notice, who does the team view as the most major league ready pitchers behind them? And that could be Burke and Thompson, the two starter prospects who received invites to big league camp. Burke, a towering over-slot signing out of the third round of 2021 draft, finished last season in AAA and had already been tabbed as potentially this year's Davis Martin, since actual Davis Martin might be busy trying to be this year's Johnny Cueto. And the Sox had 8 different pitchers, excluding openers, making starts last year. They'll need depth beyond Burke. It's high time the Sox start getting some returns on their spree of multi-million-dollar investments into high school pitching in the 2019 and 2020 drafts. And Thompson, which was a 2019 second-round pick, getting the invite indicates he's starting to bubble up to the top after participating in Project Birmingham last September. Good stuff from Fegan there. It's a excellent article to read if you have the opportunity in The Athletic. So Colson Montgomery, commented on right-hand pitcher Sean Burke, which is the number 9 White Sox prospect. He's a competitor, man. He competes on the mound for sure. He goes out and gives it his all. He makes everything tough on everybody. He's 6'6", and he throws gas. He's got good stuff. I'm excited for him this year too. Talking about a mess here, it's the Eloy Jimenez mess, in my opinion. The White Sox have failed to go out and get a proven right fielder. So you have got Oscar Colas, who doesn't have a ton of experience at all, vying for that spot, excited to be maybe a difference maker at that spot. Lurie Garcia has been mentioned as someone that could play all over the place, namely in the outfield. And Gavin Sheets, of course, might get an opportunity. Well, as we covered last week, Eloy Jimenez had a media session and he spoke his mind about wanting to play right field. I think this is a situation that could have been avoided if the White Sox absolutely filled that need and got a right fielder, and Eloy Jimenez would be in the DH spot. Well, Ozzie Guillen spoke up, and I love what Ozzie Guillen said. Maybe you saw this. He talked about it on the Score 670 recently. This was what Guillen said, revolving on this whole Eloy Jimenez manner, wanting to play right field. Here's Guillen. I hope somebody has some guts in the White Sox organization. Got to give him a call, and I think they did. You're going to be the DH. You're going to be the DH, whether you like it or not. That's all you can do. You prove us wrong for the last 3 years to put you in the outfield, Guillen said. We want you happy. Yes, we do want you happy, but also we want the team better. I think it's well said by Ozzie Guillen. The team will be better. Of course, if Eloy Jimenez can stay healthy, and Eloy Jimenez stays healthy if he is the DH, in my opinion. The dynamic duo of Jason Benetti and Steve Stone will be back for another season. And depending on who you ask, it's quite possibly the best news of the offseason. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Well, you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but you don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. They're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? They are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk over to the pharmacy and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. Hey, some good news finally, and also some more places to drink. We'll get to that in a moment. Sox dropped this news late last week. We've been wondering about it here on Locked On, and a lot of people talking about it on social media. What's going on here with the contracts of Jason Benetti and Steve Stone? Well, the White Sox have picked up a multi-year option for Jason Benetti, who is entering his 8th season as a member of the Sox broadcast team. Sox also announced a multi-year extension with Steve Stone, who is entering his 16th year in the White Sox broadcast booth. Boy, where has the time gone? Sox math is back. What's in the bucket? Look, I could probably do without what's in the bucket and some of the other stuff that goes on, but I love the chemistry that Benetti and Stone have. They really get each other. I think Jason Benetti knows what he has in Steve Stone, wealth of knowledge, especially from the pitcher's standpoint. And with all the young arms that have come through the White Sox organization lately, it is so great to set him up on a tee, so to speak, and let him just, have at it. And he does a great job of how some of these pitchers can come back from certain injuries, extend themselves in terms of innings, get to those secondary pitches. What are they missing? And how can they get to it in game? How can they get those adjustments done? Stone has been great, and they are great together. if you ever have a chance to listen to other tandems out there, if you have the MLB extra innings package, which I had years ago, and you're listening to, maybe when the Sox are on the road, you're listening to whatever home broadcast you get, there are some just absolute duds out there. It just zero personality, no chemistry with their broadcast partners. So we've got something good here. Benetti and Stone. I just absolutely love, how they almost can finish each other's sentences, and it'll be nice to have them back in the booth. There was also something in the Chicago Sun-Times. We've been talking about these 500 level bars that are going to be at Sox Park this season. And this was an article from David Struett. I don't know if you had a chance to see this. The view bars is what they're being called. Under construction on the 500 level concourse will feature walk-up drink service and table seating. The Sox announced recently the team demolished 8 rows of seats in sections 516 and 548 to make room for the bars, which will be sponsored by Molson Coors' brands Miller High Life and Blue Moon. The idea behind the bars is to help fans experience the park in new ways, which means, please, somebody come up to the 500 level and visit it. That's what Brooks Boyer said. White Sox Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer said that in a statement. These 2 new view bars invite fans to customize their ballpark experience, providing open spaces to see the game from different perspectives. Boyer said. The Sox, this is a great line here, a couple lines. Tells you everything you need to know. The White Sox initially had bigger plans for the bars when it applied for a building permit in September, but the bars were simplified afterward to meet the budget. The revised plan called for bars that are self-contained units with minimal requirements for plumbing and reduced requirements for electrical services. And the White Sox are funding the project themselves, a team spokesperson said. No surprise there. Folks, thank you so much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick _GGTB. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get those questions in for Wednesday's mailbag. That is lockedonsox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, we're opening up the mailbag and getting to some questions and comments. Hey, really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski, and until next time, go Sox.